Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to get into it. And also, I want to announce real quick a new feature. If you go to our website, kvoi.com, there is now a new tab on the website. It's called Watch. And you can watch this live as well. So many options. You can listen to it on your dial. You can at our website as well. Or if you're in a position to watch it, you get to hear the conversation that we're having here on the air, as well as see what it looks like here in studio, and watch that as well. So we're trying to add that in, and it's a fun element of what we do. So go ahead and check that out. Mr. Tony Penn, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I think it's important to set up our conversation. You have a very specific skill, organizational skill, and it's followed you in every position you've had. Tell us where you came from to Tucson now almost 10 years ago, and your experience in history, and what you feel like you've brought to the United Way here.
Great. Well, first let me say, Zach, again, I appreciate the opportunity to come on and be with you and be with your listeners today.
Yes.
And I humbly take this as an opportunity to be able to share my personal story, a bit of my personal story. And I came to Tucson in southern Arizona back in 2010. A very challenging time in the economy, not just here in Tucson, but across the nation. Of course, that was still in the throes of the economic downturn.
Right.
And as we all know, not only did it impact us globally, but locally it impacted Tucson severely. In fact, we all know that our unemployment rate here spiked significantly. And not only that, it was a challenging time for to be able to find great living wage job opportunities for us locally. But of course, Zach, it also impacted, as you would guess, the philanthropic community, and that is people's ability to be able to share resources with the nonprofit sector and with organizations like the United Way of Tucson in southern Arizona. So, Zach, I kind of like to term it that we went through a bump in the road.
Yeah.
Like most any organizations, and especially Zach, we've got a 97-year history of being on the ground serving Tucson and southern Arizona. And Zach, you don't go through almost a century without having some ups and downs and some peaks and valleys.
Right.
But the community here at that particular time needed a leader for the United Way, and I was privileged and thrilled that part of my skill set is I do turnarounds, Zach.
Yep.
And so I'm glad that I got the chance to be able to come to this wonderful community. Zach, over the course of a 40-plus year career and a very diverse career on the for-profit side for many years, and also I'm a veteran. Proudly served this.
Thank you for your service.
Served this country and proudly wore the uniform. But Zach, also now 18 years plus in the nonprofit sector.
Wow.
I like to call my transition from success to significance.
Okay.
And the significant work that I've had to do in the nonprofit sector has been the greatest work of my life. And some of that has happened right here in Tucson and southern Arizona, as we have strengthened our United Way now to be one of the best United Ways throughout the country. And we've got the analytics and the metrics to prove it, Zach. Our United Way this past year, and as we finished our fiscal year, and we're on a July to June calendar, because it's all about metrics for us, Zach, and the ability to be able to measure that we touched the lives of more than 155,000 kids, families, and seniors through our work of being able to strengthen this United Way. And those impact numbers are off the charts, and it shows that over the course of the 9+ years that I've had an opportunity to be here in this community, Zach, that our United Way has grown and that it has strengthened, but it did not happen without finding a warm, welcoming community that embraced the brand still and believed in the United Way.
CEO and president of the United Way of Tucson and Southern Arizona, Tony Penn, is in studio. So I want to ask a two-part question off of that. One is, what does the United Way of Tucson and Southern Arizona do? And then I want to get back to the analytics part, and how do you measure?
Okay.
What are the metrics of this brand, this organization is telling in Tucson?
Great.
I would love to hear how it's comparing to the rest of the country. But first, you've honed an elevator speech, a momentous task when it comes to United Way.
Yeah.
What does United Way do? What do people not know that it does? That's probably the important question.
Okay. Well, great. First, Zach, we're a part of a worldwide movement. The United Way worldwide is actually part of an organization that this past year we're in 45 countries, Zach. We actually impacted, you heard our 155,000 here locally, but worldwide, 61 million people around the world were impacted by the work of United Way. Our United Way here, we're about a $20 million entity that we share with the community in total assets here, but we're part of an organization that last year was close to $5 billion. That's the United Way. One of the mantras within the United Way system is that we impact globally, but we serve locally. And so locally, each United Way picks strategic imperatives that it believes, and the community does this, not me, Zach, not the board, not our investors, but the community gets to decide what your United Way will attack as far as issues of helping to do our mission, and that is to unite people, ideas, and resources to build a thriving community for all. And that's basically what we do. And this community here, at our last strategic plan, said that it wanted its United Way to be able to cover the entire life cycle. And Zach, that sounded like a huge challenge for us. But we were able to take that direction from the community and break it down into 3 life cycles. And that is first starting with being able to help create and people get to educational attainment from cradle to career. And so, and help kids in early childhood education all the way through post-secondary education related to helping folks to achieve those things. And so the United Way works through a initiative that we call Cradle to Career. And if you go to our website, you can go over to the Cradle to Career initiative, and you see that we partner with school districts. We partner with post-secondary education, the University of Arizona, Pima Community College, all of these folks who serve on a leadership council, and they help us, and we help the community play a backbone and helping people to maximize their potential in education. That's the first thing that we do. Second strategic imperative is to help create financially stable households, because we know after education, being able to help people maximize their income and be financially stable is the next building block in building a thriving community. And so through that, we do a myriad of programs. One, like our VITA program, that we're the largest tax preparer in the state of Arizona, and we to get their taxes done for free. Zach, so for families, that's the largest paycheck they'll get for the year. But not only do we maximize those refunds by doing those taxes for free up to $60,000 threshold per family, but we help them learn literacy, financial literacy. And that is, I've seen people get their first bank account. Some folks come in, Zach, and get back in school. Some folks come in and become homeowners because we help them to become and have a stable income and a stable household. The last is access to health care, because without health, Zach, and great health, you've got nothing. And it begins with being able to do that. Next phase of the life cycle, we focus also too on seniors and helping seniors to be able to thrive. So after you have early childhood education, people get to post-secondary education and maximize their potential there, gives them an opportunity to have a great career while we help them have a financially stable help seniors thrive by helping them to stay in their homes just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And in that case, that helps with the quality of life. And in that, we give them a little bit of help that they might need through our partnerships, through an elder alliance that we have with organizations that help them and go into the homes and help them with the things that they need on a day-to-day basis. But also, we even cover end-of-life issues, and that is as people make the transition, Zach, which we all at some point in time. It's great to have a plan. And because many families are devastated when they have to make that transition and help a family member make that transition.
Right.
They're devastated when they don't have a plan. So being able to understand this one statistic, Zach, and that is that the fewer days that they get to stay in hospice in the hospital versus hospice in your own bed can be financially devastating. And it's our goal to help families to enjoy that hospice in their own bed. Zach, when my turn comes, I want to be in my own bed, surrounded by my own family, as I wish them farewell and as they wish me farewell. That's the best scenario, and we want it for everyone.
Love it. My mom has worked in end-of-life fields for probably a decade or more, and so that hits close to home that is so important.
Yeah, right.
So we're with Tony Penn, the CEO and president of the United Way of Tucson, Southern Arizona. By the way, if you have a question or a comment, 790-2040 is your live line opportunity to jump in and ask. It should be a question for Tony. Don't ask me a question. You've got Tony Penn here in studio. Give Tony a question, 790-2040. So those are some of the strategic initiatives that Tucson has said, Tony, and the United Way of Tucson in Southern Arizona, we want you to be working on these things. How is the metrics, how is the success in those areas mapping to the rest of the country? When you say, when you talk about us as a United Way here, how are we comparing to the rest of the country, and especially in these areas? We'd love to close out this first segment and just kind of hear where you felt you've taken the organization over the last now almost 10 years.
Right. Well, Zach, we are making good progress, even though we have many challenges, even though here in Tucson, a quarter of our population we know still live under the poverty line. We're making good progress. And when I say making good progress, we put out just a couple of weeks ago a report with our Cradle to Career initiative. We call it C2C is the handle that we use for that. And we put out a annual progress report. And this was our third progress report. And I'll encourage your readers to go to our UnitedWayTucson.org website, click on the education button. That'll take you over to Cradle to Career, and you'll be able to see that annual report that we shared with the community that talks about the fact that we're making progress with our third grade reading proficiency. Zach, because for the first time, we've got data sharing agreements across the K-12 education system. And part of the challenge was being able to share data. And that was a milestone in being able to make progress. And Zach, that's part of what to Career does, and what United Way did as a backbone agency was to have these data sharing agreements for the first time. Because, Zach, you cannot fix what you do not measure.
Right.
But now we have accurate data to be able to do that analysis. And part of the reason why is because we came together as a community, and now we're sharing that information and that data. Plus, Zach, what it helps us to be able to do is look at the pockets of excellence that we might have and take initiatives that work and scale them across the entire system. And so, Zach, we're making progress there. Another area of progress around the education is here locally, we've got an issue with disconnected youth. And those are kids between the age of 16 and 24 who don't have a job, who are not in school, and who don't have a plan. Zach, because of investments that your United Way is going out to raise resources to be able to invest, we have what's called the Rec Center, Re-Engagement Center, that we do in partnership with Goodwill Industries. And there we have pathway coaches, and these are young folks who are trained and speak the language of those kids. Zach, unfortunately, I don't speak the language of those between 16 and 24.
I'm not sure I do, so it's all good.
Yeah, although I think they would be surprised with my playlist, though. Okay, I got a pretty...
They would not be surprised by mine, so you've got one on me there, Tony.
Good. But we're making progress with those, and you'll see that in that information. So that's just few of the statistics, and we're doing a little bit better on that poverty scale with initiatives like those that I shared with you that we're doing in our financial stability work, Zach. So all of that together says that Tucson's making progress. But I'll tell you, one of the best indicators, though, Zach, is the fact that you can see economic development happening in our community. Because as we strengthen our talent pool, we'll get more of those organizations like Raytheon who decides to expand their business here. We'll get more of those like Caterpillar who decides to put a regional headquarters here because the great remedy, Zach, for a challenged community is always a living wage, living wage job, and the opportunity and the skills that it takes to be able to acquire it. And that's what we work on also, too, at the United Way. And so the fact that we can see that economic development happening here tells us that we're making progress.
Tony Penn, thank you. One last quick question before we go to our first break, and then we'll come back, and we're going to zoom out. We're going to talk about some of these things because not only have you been working on these strategic initiatives within the United Way of Tucson and Southern Arizona, but you've also used that organization and your role as a voice for these issues in the community. So I want to take a step back with you and look at what you see in Tucson, where we are excelling, those areas of excellence, and where those gaps are, as you would put it, and maybe where we go on some of these themes. But this one's a really easy answer. I just wanted to bring it up, make sure our listeners know. How many affiliated organizations do you work with?
80 plus agencies.
I can't remember if you mentioned that earlier, but I wanted to make sure
80 plus agencies.
And this spans healthcare, this spans financial, this spans education,
sector,
this spans nonprofit and private. And
because we know that we're stronger together. And certainly that is our belief, and in executing our mission of uniting people, ideas, and resources to build a thriving community, the way that you can make an impact is you do it collectively. And that's what the United Way is all about.
Tony Penn, we'll be right back. Tucson, 790-2040 is your opportunity to get in on this conversation. We're going to talk education, opportunity at a city level, and also our healthcare and 55-plus community as well. I've got some things to throw your way and get your thoughts on. We'll get into the community when we come back. Tucson, don't go away. 1030 The Voice, trusted local news and talk. Tucson, welcome back to the show here on 1030 The Voice. With me, your host, Zach Yenser. We're talking about people and ideas shaping Tucson's future, and the person with ideas here in the studio today is none other than President and CEO of the United Way of Tucson and Southern Arizona, Tony Penn. Tony, thank you for being in studio with us today.
Thanks so much, Zach, for having me.
Well, I asked Tony, I said, Tony, if we give a good chunk in the first part to just go over the United Way, right? I mean, 20 minutes is still a momentous task. There's so much work that the United Way of Tucson and Southern Arizona does. I said in the second segment, could we step back and maybe go 20 to 25 to 30,000 feet? And there's strategic initiatives that the United Way really focuses their work around. Those include education, financial stability and opportunity, and access to health care. And I think there's this overall view, certainly from your chair as CEO and president, that if we get those themes right, it's going to go a long way towards creating the overall economic prosperity and development, not at a city level, at a household level, that we need to succeed. So I wanted to get your view on that. And in your private sector roles and in your nonprofit sector roles, you are skilled at the turnaround, at seeing where an organization can go, where it is currently, how to measure your way to success. And I would love if that hat could go on even when it comes to the city of Tucson, because
Right.
I know you care. Education, real quick. You have been a proponent, or at least a supporter,
Yes.
of the Pima County Preschool Investment Program
Yes.
proposal,
Yes.
PCPIP. We covered that extensively
Yes.
on the show. Tell us about why you came out in support of that, and why you think it's important that at some level, sometime, some way,
Yes.
we get high quality early childhood education in place here in
Right.
Tucson.
So first of all, Zach, let me share with your listeners, and some of whom this might be a revelation, and to many of whom they already know it. The United Way of Tucson of Southern Arizona has been very engaged in early childhood education for years. In fact, we as an
Yeah,
organization
it's true.
were the first to help get a rating system across the state of a 5-star rating system around what it takes to help to create a great early education facility. And we've been very much engaged for a number of years at being able to increase the level of education for the caregivers in the early education facilities across the community and across the state. And so we've been participating with the College of Education at the University of Arizona. There's a master's degree program in early education today. There was not one several years ago. But because of the fact that we partner with and get funded by organizations like First Things First, who is a very key strategic partner in that early childhood education work, there's now a master's degree in early childhood education, because it starts with the educator, but it also starts with the community that's willing to invest. Because those communities that have made strategic investments in early childhood education has seen a tremendous return in that investment by the fact that third grade reading proficiency goes up. Kids are able to not only pass but excel at eighth grade math, where algebra is a part of the curriculum. Kids graduate high school on time, and those are the communities where kids have the best opportunity to go on and be successful in post-secondary education. That's why we're a proponent of it. We know that the science is true and valid. 90% of brain development, Zach, takes place before kids are 5 years old. So that's the window of opportunity to be able to help not only the kids, but families who also need wraparound services to make sure that the kids are in the very best condition they could possibly be in when they arrive at those early learning centers. And so that's why we partner with many community organizations to make sure that they're well fed, that they are had a good night's rest, but at the same time they are safe and protected. And that's why we know that there's a tremendous return on investment in early childhood education.
Do you get the sense that I've been trying to cut through the kind of the rhetoric around that topic here in Tucson, and I don't mean rhetoric in a negative way. That's just the first word that came to my mind. A lot of conversation around the PCPIP, specifically the PC part,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Do you feel like the community is ready to invest big picture in this, and it's just how do we invest in it? Or do you think that Tucson as a community is not ready to be thinking in these terms? What do you make of the conversation in our community around early childhood education?
I think we get it. I think for the most part we understand it, Zach. Part of the challenge is, as you know, is that we're a bit of a retirement community. And because of that, some folks who come here to take advantage of the beautiful environment that we have here. Zach, I love the desert. I've actually become a desert rat myself. I like it a lot.
Got you hooked.
It is. It's a beautiful place, and the lush desert that we live in is it's a privilege to be here. And so part of the challenge is that we've got this dynamic between those that that come here to retire. We've got the dynamic that we need to increase our talent pool if we're going to bring in great living wage jobs. And then, of course, we've got the challenge that we are not a extremely wealthy community overall when it comes to the fact that our living wage and our wages, we've got to get them up. And so those are the challenges and the gaps in between. But one thing that I can say about this great community is that we are good at taking on those challenges. I've got many friends, Zach, and who are entrepreneurial and who've done a great job and have done well, who make significant investments back into this community. And for them, I want to say thank you. And who believe in the fact that making an investment in this community is very important to be able to, and that lifting all boats is a great opportunity. And so we just need to do a little bit more, Zach, and make sure that we're willing to make the investments in the right way, but give a significant return on the investment. And so, Zach, being able to instill in the process some business acumen so that we can validate that investment and that we are worthy of that investment is part of the reason why initiatives like Cradle to Career have taken root. And why initiatives like Cradle to Career that the United Way does in partnership again with the education community and the business community and the healthcare community, that we're all at the table and that we're able to say and show that we're engaged and we're ready to move things forward. And so, Zach, it's just coming up with the right initiative and being able to validate that we're worthy of investment.
Tony Penn, CEO and President of the United Way of Tucson and Southern Arizona. I was thinking about a conversation I had with a fellow young professional who said that a lot of the challenges that we face, this person said, I struggle with how we can make strides in a lot of these areas without addressing the K-12 experience that we're providing. If we aren't cultivating young minds to be engaged, to be thoughtful, to be innovative, and to see Tucson as a city that has attractive opportunities that can be their city to help mold. If we can't even keep Tucsonans in Tucson, how do we attract the same kind of talent, not just for a job, but to plant roots? I thought that was a really well put, well thought out statement. Do you resonate with that, or are there parts that you would add to that or take away from that?
Absolutely. And part of that is the fact that, Zach, we need to be able to figure out what attracts that talent and what retains the talent, what will retain our youth, because certainly our youth and what the segment of the population that Zach, even you represent, is what we've got to make sure that we focus on. And so to be able to do that, you can see that the community's making some progress when you look at our downtown area and the significant investment that's being made there to be able to create a vibrant downtown. But then also to be able to build residents so that people can live in that urban environment of downtown. The more that we can do those kinds of things, the more that I believe that we'll be able to make progress on our retention for millennials and younger. But Zach, to be able to get them up to that point, we've got to care about their kids.
Right.
And so that tends to be one of the biggest challenges for being able to get folks in your age group and folks in that demographic to stay. So that means that we've got to do a better job at the investments that we're willing to make in K-12 education and early childhood education. And so that's the appeal that we're making through the initiative. But exactly what formula works, everybody's got to come to the table, and it's going to take the municipalities, the business community, the education community, as well as across the spectrum of those that are willing to come together and help us. Other communities have figured this out, and other communities are making that investment. And I trust and believe that we've got everything that we need right here, Zach, to be able to figure it out too.
Tony, Penn, there's so many components of what you do at the United Way of Tucson, Southern Arizona. We talked about education, but what you've started to hint at as well is something that, for example, I was reading an article about evictions, and Arizona is really low on that list, both in Phoenix and actually we are better than Phoenix in terms of evictions. We got a problem here in Tucson. So Arizona has this challenge. But what I'm getting to is that a survey of those evicted recently showed that there was a negative correlation between median incomes and eviction rates, which means that, according to this survey, their thought was that affordable housing costs matter less than job opportunities or general city-level prosperity. And I'm not asking this question to get into the specifics of that, but it just stood out to me because I work on affordable housing issues.
Yes.
I work on housing. It's incredibly important. We can't underestimate the power of job opportunities and general city-level prosperity.
Right.
And your work at the United Way focuses on financial health and economic opportunity. So at a city level, what is your vision and hope for Tucson in terms of bolstering our job opportunities and our general city level prosperity? You are an expert at this point on the turnaround. How do we do it?
Well, I have to commend a couple of entities and organizations that are already, I believe, Zach, doing a great job in that area. Certainly our Metro Chamber of Commerce, I believe, focusing on the small business aspect of being able to strengthen and bolster small business is extremely important. And being able to provide value in the work that the Chamber of Commerce does. And Zach, I don't take this lightly either, because I'm a former chair of our Tucson Metro Chamber of Commerce. Back in 2015, I had the privilege to serve on the Metro Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors and to actually chair the organization. And help strengthen that. So Zach, having a willingness to do the extracurricular work is not something that I've shied away from either. And being the only nonprofit or first nonprofit executive to chair our Chamber of Commerce, I believe, was a privilege. But therein lies an opportunity. So there, strengthening our local businesses and our small businesses is extremely important. I have to say that I believe that the organization that is our outreach for bringing business in, Sun Corridor, they've done a good job of being able to help to go out and promote Tucson as a place that you can plant a flag and bring business has been important and has been successful. And so as a former member of the Sun Corridor team, and as far as being a business leader is concerned, I'm glad to have had the opportunity to work with Joe Snell and that team that, as I believe, has done a good job of bringing business in and retaining business. As you heard me mention earlier about businesses that are growing here, like Raytheon and others who are growing here, it's extremely important. But besides those entities, I think the better job that we can do around being able to grow our talent pool, that is the most important aspect of it. Zach, and that is because business follows talent today.
It does.
And,
yes, sir.
Yep. And so being able to retain those and making sure that as our youngsters graduate from the University of Arizona and walk across that stage, that their first trip is not to the airport. We want to make sure that
Yes,
we
sir.
figure out a way to be able to keep them here. And
Yeah.
the more that we can build the kind of livable city that the millennials and youngers will want to be a part of and want to stay and enjoy, the more that we can help them feel as if
Yep.
we care about their kids and are willing to make investments in education, the more that we'll make this community be able to prosper.
Tony, Penn, I think that you hit on the ecosystem of it, And this is why, and I don't, it's not like I talk about this every day on the air, but this is why I feel so invested in my work outside the studio with the organization Tucson Young Professionals,
Yes.
as the executive director of that organization.
Yes.
And I'm speaking from the heart now, because like I said, I don't bring this up every day on the show, but so much of what we are looking to accomplish in this community is based on making sure that we craft a community together that engages our young people and our young families.
Absolutely.
Without that, we don't have as much of a chance as we could. And it means, they tell us, getting our infrastructure right. It means getting our job mobility and opportunities right, and make sure our incomes are keeping pace,
Yes.
and that we have an affordability and a quality of life.
Yes.
There are some things that have to be simultaneously growing and developing. And I think a lot of our conversations in the city are not built around how do we, whether we are older or younger, native or non-native, private property owners or renters, how do we make sure that we are leaving a community that can be sustained by our kids and our grandkids? It takes me to my last point I want to get your thoughts on. You and I were talking during the break. We both saw that article about how Tucson struggles to, really the survey spoke more to retaining. The article said attracting, but really it's retaining. It's really keeping those who we have here. What we know at the bare minimum, according to the census, is that we hemorrhaged about 1,400 young professionals out of our community every year on average between 2012 2017. In the same span of time, our net migration was about 4,000, I believe, of our 55 plus community. Now, I'm the intergenerational guy. It's how I got my start in radio. So this is not an intergenerational battle at all. But our community is getting significantly older and is not getting younger at this point in time. You deal with healthcare, you deal with senior care, you deal with the aging population. What would you, as we close out our time together, what do you think about Tucson's kind of demographic shifts, and how do we take care of both of our demographics?
Great.
How do we take care of our aging population and also continue to create that viability for young people in Tucson?
Great. Zach, that is a fantastic question, and it is certainly one that goes back to something that you and I maybe said off the air during our break, and that it requires a 25,000 foot view of the challenges, but also the opportunities that we have here in Tucson and Southern Arizona. And Zach, I think one of our tremendous opportunities that we must pay attention to, that is probably the best part of the solution for that conundrum that you just identified so artfully, and that is that our opportunity to be able to grow our own, to take advantage of one of the greatest assets that lies right here in Tucson and Southern Arizona, is the fact that we have youth here already, and our youth can become what we need to be able to bridge the gap and to grow our talent pool, but we've got to pay attention to them. And the more that we can focus on making an investments in our youth, the more that we can bridge the gap to create that thriving community that is so much a part of the mission of the United Way, but also should be part of the overall vision for this community. Zach, we can't ignore our greatest asset. And our greatest asset is not the fact that we live in a beautiful community and got beautiful mountains and we've got fantastic weather here that attracts people to come here to retire. Our greatest asset, Zach, is the fact that we've got kids here who we can grow organically if we make investments in them to be able to not only maximize their potential and reach their educational potential and pinnacle, but then also help them, Zach, to know that we love them and we want them to stay here because we were making an investment in them. We can make it reciprocal. And people love a reciprocal opportunity, Zach. And I run into people like my current chairman of the board, Edmund Marquez, is an organically grown asset here. He grew up here in this community. He was trained and educated in this community, and he stayed in this community. And Zach, we need more examples of being able to do just that. And that's why I'm excited about the year ahead with Edmund as our chairman of the board of the United Way of Tucson, because he agrees with me. Our most valuable asset are our youth.
Tony Penn, President and CEO of the United Way of Tucson in Southern Arizona. UnitedWayTucson.org is the place where people can go and find more about what we've been talking about in the last hour. Your Cradle to Career initiative, your work on creating financially stable households, your work on access to health care for both those young and old, even towards end of life, are all things that from a strategic initiative standpoint speak to the United Way's focus on those components as a part of this city ecosystem of creating these investments from cradle to career to past to make sure that we can grow our own and sustain our own and keep our own. Tony Penn, thank you for your work. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm not going to be shy about saying that this was something I was selfishly excited about getting to do, getting to finally sit with you here in studio. I appreciate your time, what you brought to the community, and we'll do this again soon.
Hey, thank you so much, Zach, and thanks to your listeners.
Tony Penn, CEO of Tucson United Way of Tucson in Southern Arizona. When we come back from the break, we will wrap up this hour, and then going into the next hour, TUSD Board President Adelita Grijalva, speaking of education, will be in to talk about what they have going on over there. We're going to talk about the news of the week, don't worry, but even bigger picture, we're going to step back like we did with Tony Penn and look at some of the key education issues impacting our Southern Arizona region in Tucson and what TUSD is doing to tackle those challenges. It'll be a good conversation. 790-2040 is your opportunity to call in. You are on 1030 The Voice, trusted local news and talk. We'll be right back.